inviting Ego, the Deputy Governor, to go ahead with the reading of the statement.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, Director of Communication. A very good afternoon to you, viewers and listeners. Welcome to the reading of the Monetary Policy Statement for the month of April 2024. On 8th of April 2024, the Bank of Uganda Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, increased the central bank rate, CBR, to 10.25%. Inflation indicators from Uganda Bureau of Statistics for March 2024 reveal a marginal decline in headline inflation to 3.3% from 3.4% in February 2024. The decrease is primarily attributed to the reduction in food crop inflation, which declined to negative 0.4% from 0.5%. Conversely, services inflation experienced a slight increase to 5.5% from 5.4%, while core inflation remained steady at 3.4%. The prevailing conditions of reduced aggregate demand and increasing supply are mitigating strong inflationary pressures. However, risks of elevated inflation persist. The recent CBR increase has had a spillover effect of stabilizing the shilling exchange rate. However, the shilling remains vulnerable due to outflows of short-term foreign investor funds from the domestic market in search of attractive yields in other markets and strong domestic demand by corporates. The weakening of the shilling significantly impacts domestic prices, which could push inflation higher. The evolution of inflation remains challenging, influenced by factors such as the shilling exchange rate, supply-side shocks, global inflation, and domestic food supply. Forecasts have been adjusted downwards compared to the previous round, largely due to the relative stability of the shilling exchange rate. However, short-term projections indicate inflation may rise to between 5.5% to 6% within 12 months ahead, with a return to medium-term target of 5% anticipated in the second half of 2025. Significant upside risks to the inflation outlook persist, including geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, potential energy price hikes, tighter global financial conditions that could lead to a stronger depreciation of the shilling exchange rate, and unfavorable weather patterns. On the contrary, inflation may undershoot expectations if monetary policy reduces demand more than anticipated and global growth deteriorates sharply, resulting in lower import prices. While the economy retains resilience, recent high-frequency indicators suggest a slight downturn in the near-term growth. Uncertainty surrounding the global economic outlook, shilling depreciation, and tight domestic financial conditions could dampen domestic demand. Nonetheless, economic growth for financial year 2023/24 is forecast at approximately 6%, and the subsequent years are expected to hover between 5.5% and 6.5%. A further rise in inflation may dampen household real incomes, leading to reduced consumer spending, while high raw material import costs could constrain investment expenditures. Shortfalls in tax revenue relative to targets may necessitate tax hikes or increased domestic financing, which could potentially crowd out the private sector credit growth. External factors such as a weaker global economy or escalated geopolitical conflicts could further impede growth through disruptions to supply chains and reduce export demands. Considering the persistent upside risk to inflation, the MPC deemed it necessary to tighten monetary policy further to anchor inflation around the medium-term target of 5%. Consequently, the CBR has been raised by 25 basis points to 10.25%. The bands on the CBR remain at plus and minus 2 percentage points, and the margins on the CBR for the rediscount and the bank rate at 3 and 4 percentage points respectively. As a result, the rediscount and the bank rates will be 13.25% and 14.25% respectively. The increase in the CBR is a prudent measure to address heightened inflation risks. The monetary policy stance balances the need to contain inflation while supporting sustainable economic growth, which is essential for Uganda's socio-economic transformation. The MPC stands prepared to respond to any materialization of the identified risks. That marks the end of the reading of the monetary policy statement for the month of April 2024, and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor, Mr. Michael Atingi-Ego. We will now take questions. We'll start with those in the room. I will also invite those who are connecting virtually to either post your questions in a comment or raise your hand online, and we'll give you a chance to raise your question.
James Go is my name, and my question is regards the shilling. Of course, I know it has been fluctuating between 39 and 38. So how severe has been the impact? And then we realize also the Kenyan currency has really peaked on you notice the Kenyan currency has also gained over the Ugandan shilling in the last couple of months. So can you just give us a projection of how it has impacted regional trade, and also considering the fact that Kenya and Uganda have a very their trade relationship is very big in the region? Thank you.
Okay, we'll take some more. Okay, as we wait for the questions to come in, I'll request Deputy Governor to take the first question.
Okay, thank you so much, Dennis, for your question. If I got you right, you're asking how severe has the impact of this fluctuation of the currency been. I think for us, we are looking at it in terms of the inflation outlook, because we know that there's a significant pass-through into domestic prices from changes in the exchange rate. So certainly when we had that depreciation, when the currency moved to levels of about 3,950, we did our inflation outlook projections, and we saw that it was going to elevate the inflation outlook quite further. So that's why in the month of March, we called for this ad hoc monetary policy committee meeting, because we wanted to rein in on that before it does materialize. So indeed, when we raised the policy rate by 50 basis points, like I mentioned in the monetary policy statement, it has had a spillover effect into the exchange rate by kind of like stabilizing it. We've seen the currency appreciate since then from about 3,950 to approximately now 3,830, 3,840, partly as a result of that. There are, of course, other factors that might have contributed to the appreciation, like the inflows on account of remittances and export. But we take note of the fact that monetary policy stance we took had a spillover effect that stabilized the currency. So really the major impact was inflation outlook. And like I mentioned, compared to that round, that forecast round, we now think that the inflation outlook is slightly lower than what we had in by the time we read the statement, in March. And that's why we are even taking further actions to raise it by 25 basis points, because we still see the vulnerabilities. And we hope that by doing so, we will lower the inflation forecast much further, so that by 2025, we are back to our medium-term targets. Now, you asked about the impact of the Kenya shilling appreciation. Maybe we need, first of all, to understand why did the Kenya shilling appreciate? I think there are a number of factors that have contributed to that. And the two key ones were the bond that was floated to repay or to buy back the euro bond that was maturing in the month of June 2024. My understanding is that the Kenya government was able to raise 1.5 billion euros to buy back part of the maturing 2 billion euros in the month of June. But beyond that, the Kenyan government also issued an infrastructure bond, which was oversubscribed, and there was significant amount of inflows. My understanding is that close to 250 billion Kenya shillings was realized from that offer. I need to get the numbers right, but that's what I read. So what we see was that there was a significant inflow of dollars into the Kenyan market as a result of those two transactions, which has strengthened the Kenya shillings from the loss of about 165 Kenya shillings per dollar to now about 130, 135. Now, what is the impact in terms of the relationship between Kenya and Uganda? Certainly, it's going to make the Kenyan goods more expensive, because you recall that sometime in January, Ugandans were paying about 22, 23 Uganda shillings for 1 Kenya shilling. And last week, at the last check of it, it was about 29 Uganda shillings to 1 Kenya shilling. So certainly it's going to make imports from Kenya more expensive. Now, Kenyans, of course, will see that it will be much more cheaper to import from Uganda, because now they are paying fewer Kenya shillings to get the same amount of Uganda shillings. So that's how I can just talk about the relationship between Uganda and Kenya as a result of this Kenya shilling appreciation. But maybe Adam may have something to add to that.
Thank you very much. We have one more from viewers who are connected online. This is from Fred O. And the question is, what is the likely impact of the Constitutional Court's decision to uphold the AHA on international investment flows to Uganda? I will repeat. What is the likely impact of the Constitutional Court's decision to uphold the AHA on international investment flows to Uganda?
Let me start by maybe giving the genesis of this. You might recall that sometime in July last year, if I'm not mistaken, particularly when the World Bank suspended new aid to Uganda on account partly of this law, we saw the currency depreciate by almost 100 shillings, from about 3650 there to almost 36 to 37 something. So I won't believe that the impact of that law, together with how donors responded to it, was partly factored in that depreciation. Now, the depreciation that we've had is largely on account of other developments, such as the differential between the yields on Uganda government securities and other securities of the peer markets. Now, since the upholding of that law last week, I've not seen any impact as yet on the Uganda currency. If anything, I've seen an appreciation since then. So how you want, maybe it's still too early to assess the impact, but I'm just now talking about what we've so far seen in the market. That's what I can say. It could be too early to assess it.
Thank you. We have one more. This is from Clean Pips Trading. The question is, what efforts is the central bank making to communicate its policies and decisions effectively to the public and market participants, particularly regarding exchange rate developments and their implications?
I will ask the Director of Communications to respond to the question.
The central bank is using several channels. We are using both traditional media, which includes the newspapers, radio and television, as well as digital media to communicate all of our policy decisions and their implications on households, the consumers, and also on corporates that undertake investment. So you will find a number of press statements we release. We also provide opinion editorials. We also provide posts on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and we also post stories on our website. We also have a number of reports that are published on our website by the research department. And so all of the information is put out there as soon as it's made available. But in case anybody has any specific questions concerning some of our policy decisions that have not been clearly addressed in any of the media releases, please contact us at info@bou.or.ug, and we'll be happy to respond. Deputy Governor, that's all I have to say about it.
I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, please, go ahead. Mention your name and the media house you're representing.
My name is Kadu. I'm representing 24 million. My question is, Deputy. Sorry, my name is Kadu Abe. I'm representing 24 Media. Mr. Deputy Governor, my question is, currently, I think for the past 2 weeks and up to now, the traders are up and about because of what is happening concerning the taxes and the IFRS system. And my question is, what impact would what is happening now have on the economy going forward this month?
Thank you, Abe. That's more of a research question. So the Executive Director of Research will take on that.
No, I would also say that this is more to do with the Uganda Revenue Authority. And we believe that what is going on, what we are reading is temporary, because this is about a system. And what we are reading is that they are discussing the negotiating on implementation of the system. So we believe that that is temporal and therefore will be sorted out in the near term. So for it to have an effect on the economy, I think it is too early. Because there would be many channels and we don't see the feasibility of them. For example, if the traders decided to close their shops and revenue fall, and then the government doesn't spend, that's one of the channels. But we don't believe that traders can close the shops and the government fails to get revenue to spend etc. at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Deputy Governor, there is one more here from Peter Antege. And his question is, what will be the impact of adding taxes on withdrawals on the efforts to reduce the cash economy? I think this is to do with the taxes on agent banking.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that question. Really, as a central bank, we like a situation where cash is kept in the ecosystem. By that, I mean to say, once you get cash transferred to you, it would be better if you don't withdraw it, because if that cash remains in the ecosystem, then it means that the demand for physical currency is reduced. So to the extent that the tax can increase the retention of that value in the ecosystem, I think it serves well for Bank of Uganda in terms of going digital in our transactions, so that we spend less cash that is in notes and coins for physical transaction. Thank you.
Deputy Governor, I have 3 questions that have come in from Martin Luther. The first question is, where is the central bank putting its focus of inflation in the medium term? I'm not sure what this question means, but I'll just repeat it. Where is the central bank putting its focus of inflation? I think he meant forecast of inflation in the medium term. The second question is, what are the reasons that have contributed to reduced aggregate demand? And the third and final question from Martin is, how is the tight global financial condition impacting Uganda's economy? Those are from Martin Luther.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I've taught quite a lot on this, so maybe let me bring another perspective by asking the Director of Research to put in maybe a different language or crafting.
Now, the first question, Deputy Governor, is medium-term inflation forecast. We have never changed it, it remains 5%. And I think, as you read, the statement is clear that by the second half of 2025, inflation will be back to the medium-term target of 5%. The second question is on what is contributing to aggregate demand tightness. There are very many factors. One of them is true that both fiscal and monetary policy have been tight. If you look at the data released by UBOS and look at the aggregate demand composition in the 2 quarters of 2023-2024, you see that, for example, government consumption contracted by around 7% in the 2 quarters. So that one contributed to the aggregate demand tightening. Remember that 20% of GDP is government expenditure. The second is obviously tight monetary policy, which we also agree that tightness spills over into private sector credit extension. We see that private sector credit extension is down at around 7.7% in the quarter to Feb. We also see the same on monetary aggregates. They are subdued growth in the monetary aggregates. So all these really point to the tightness in the liquidity condition. However, quickly to say also that part of this tightness, as I said, resulting from monetary policy and fiscal policy, are warranted to bring back inflation to 5%, as already noted. The last question was about the global economy. I never got it clearly how the global economy is affecting Uganda.
Yes, how is tightening in the global financial conditions impacting Uganda's economy?
Again, there are very many channels. You very well know that, for example, when the Fed rates rise, when the Fed rate rises, it spills over into the exchange rate depreciation, because that's part of the story why we saw offshore exiting domestic market some time back. So the tightness in the global financial condition, meaning that their rates are higher, brings in the aspect that offshore can get a relatively risk-free return from those countries, and therefore they exited the local economy. The other aspect is that as the global economy tightened, demand for exports, both goods and services, including tourism, including our goods, also tend to decline, and that's what we have been seeing in the data. So that is on the negative side, but also global economy sometimes has its own advantage in terms of oil prices. We saw that once the global economy weakened, the demand for oil slackened, and therefore oil prices decreased, spilling over into relatively lower fuel prices. But overall, the worsening of global economy has a negative effect on the domestic economy.
And maybe one related one, what is the near-term forecast for inflation?
The near term that is 12 months horizon. That's why talking about between 5 and 6%, and that's why it is peaking in the next 12 months before it declines to 5%, as I said, in the second half of 2025.
Thank you very much. We have one more from Nayetegereza Jonah. He did mention the media house, so which institution is representing. But the question is, as at the end of June 2023, BOU report indicates over 191 trillion shillings in value of mobile money transactions. Charges of mobile money have also increased, which also affects financial inclusion. What is your comment on this?
Did you say she's Jonah or John?
Jonan Nayetegereza.
Okay, thank you, Jonan, for that question. I think by virtue of the fact that the mobile money transactions had hit 85 trillion? 191 trillion. You see, as of June 2023, that was bigger than the size of the Ugandan economy in shilling terms. So it shows you the extent to which mobile money has taken root in the country. So I think the only challenge now that is left is how can we get more financial products from that mobile money platform? How can we get more micro savings, micro loans, and micro insurance so as to improve on the livelihoods of people? Now, the issue that you talked about of the charges is, of course, what is a concern to us because it kind of like discourages financial inclusion. And as a central bank, we have tried to understand what is the cause of this largely. It is the interoperability between the various service providers, which is of a concern. And that's why the Bank of Uganda, in its wisdom, opted that we should get what we call a national payment switch, because we believe that with a national payment switch, we would be able to, a large extent, significantly lower some of these transaction costs, so that what the customers pay there is much lower than what they're currently paying. Because a national payment switch does increase interoperability, and as a central bank, we would be treating that as a public good, not for profit purposes. Out there, the platforms we have for interoperability, there is a component of profits as well, and which is inconsistent, of course, with our agenda for financial inclusion. That's why, as a central bank, we wanted to have this payment switch as early as yesterday. And we are working to see how we can quickly get it so that the transaction charges that the customers are facing are lowered as soon as possible. Thank you.
I do not see any more questions in the room. Maybe one final one from the chat room, which is related to one that we have previously responded to. The question is by Oscar Muwanga, and his question is, will Uganda be staying on the World Bank IMF program in light of the decision on AHA. That's by Oscar Mwanga. Your comment, Deputy Governor.
Looking at the IMF program, where we are well conversant with, I do not see any requirements for us to get out of the AHA in order to continue staying in the program. If anything, the last review that was completed in March did not to an extent mention that Uganda should get out of the AHA. So my answer to that question is Uganda is staying on the IMF program, and the conditions for it to stay there, AHA is not one of them.
Thank you very much, Deputy Governor. Thank you very much, Dr. Tumuwaine. Thank you very much, Dr. Adam Gume. With that, we come to the conclusion of this reading of the Monterey Policy Statement and Q&A. We will now have a Luganda session where the details of the policy statement will be explained in Luganda. Thank you very much, viewers online, for tuning in and for the questions. Ya April 2024 mu Luganda, Mwami Sonko George. Mwami Sonko, genda mu maaso obulire abali ku mpewo n'abali mu kizimbe mu room biki ebivudde mu Monterey Policy Statement ya leero Deputy Governor gy'asomye.
Webale nnyo Mwami Egesa. Nja kunokolayo ebikulu ebibadde mu alipoota y'omumyuka wa Governor ey'omwezi ogwokuna omwaka 2024 okwata ku by'ensimbi. Omumyuka wa Governor alambuludde nti akabonero kano ke twakazaako erinnya lya Central Bank Rate mu lufuutifuuti bakongeza obutundutundu 25 buli 100 okuva ku bitundu 10 buli 100 we kali mu mwezi ogwokusatu 2024 ne katuusibwa ku bitundu 10 n'obutundutundu 25 buli 100 mu mwezi guno ogwa Aprili 2024. Era omumyuka anokoddeyo nti okutwaliza awamu balabye nti enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu okutwaliza awamu eri ekkiriddemukko katono okuva ku bitundu 3 n'obutundutundu 4 buli 100 mu mwezi ogwokubiri 2024 kakati eri ku bitundu 3 n'obutundutundu 3 buli 100 mu mwezi guno ogwa Maachi 2024. Era n'anokolayo nti ekivuddeko ekyo balabye nti enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu mu ebyo ebirimibwa mu nnimiro oba mu lufuutifuuti kye bayita food crop inflation ekkakkanye n'ekkirira. Ne balaga nti naye ebyo ebikozesebwa oba ebiwanyisiganya bye bakazaako services ebyo byo byeyambuseemu katono okutwaliza awamu. Ne kiraga nti kino kivudde ku kuba nti essente abantu ze bayina ze basaasaanya bw'ozigeraageranya n'ebyo ebiri ku katale azo zikendeddeko okutwaliza awamu, era ekyo kiyambyeko okukkakkanya ebbugumu eribadde mu nkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu mu katale. N'anokolayo n'ekirala nti okutwaliza awamu ekyokwambusa akabonero kano aka Central Bank Rate mu mwezi ogwokusatu 2024 kyayambako okukkakkanya okunaabuka kwa siringi we yali mu mwezi ogwokubiri n'ogwokusatu, era anokoddeyo nti mu budde obwo yali etuuse ku 3,905 kakati ekkiririra eddala eri ku 3,883 era n'ayongera nti naye wadde ng'ogwo guli gutyo bakyalabamu obumulumulu obuyinza okuserebya siringi nga bwesigamiddwa ku bwetaavu bwa ddoola mu byenfuna munda mu Uganda awamu ne bannaffe bamusigansimbi aba batwakazako portfolio flows abazifulumya ebweru w'eggwanga. N'ayongerayo n'alambulula nti mukyalimu okusoomooza mu kyukakyuka mwendo gy'ebintu ng'ekyo kyesigamye ku bintu bisatu. Ekisooka anokoddeyo okusereba kwa siringi ya Uganda bw'ogigeraageranye n'ey'amawanga ga Amerika. N'ayogerako nti oba n'ebintu ebijja ku katale abiyinza okubeeramu ekyekango singa kiba kituuse ekyo kiyinza nakyo okwongera okuserebya siringi. N'ayongera nti n'enkyukakyuka emendo gy'ebintu okutwalizaamu mu mawanga gonna eyo naye eyinza okukosa, ate n'obungi bw'emmere katale erimibwa mu ggwanga nakyo kiyinza okubeerako engeri gye kitukosaamu mu nkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu. N'ajja n'ayongera n'alambulula nti mukyalimu ebintu ebiyinza okusindikiriza enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu okweyongera okulinnya. Ebyo n'anokolayo ensonga eziwerako, n'anokolayo obusambattuko obukyali mu kyombo ky'Abawarabu, ebbeeyi y'amafuta okulinnyako ku katale k'ensi yonna. N'ayongera nti singa ne bannaffe ag'amawanga gali nabo beeyongera okunywezaamu oba okumyumyula mu kye baakazaako monetary policy, ekyo nakyo kiyinza okwongerako okuleetamu obuzibu mu nteebereza y'enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu mu ggwanga lyattu lino Uganda. Ekyo kiyinza okukola, ebyo biyinza okuvaako esiringi ya Uganda okusereba, ate ekyo nakyo ne kyongezebwamu nti singa embeera y'obudde eba tesigadde nga bweri mu bulungi bwayo, kyo nakyo kiyinza otukosaamu ne tulaba nga enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu yeeyongedde okulinnya. Alambuludde nti wadde guli gutyo ekyo tekiyina nnyo ngeri gye kikosezzaamu enkulaakulana nga bwe baali bagiteebereza mwaka gw'ebyensimbi 2023-2024. Era ayongedde n'agumya bannayuganda nti enkulaakulana ejja kubeera ku bitundu 6 buli 100 mu mwaka gw'ebyensimbi guno gwe tulimu 23-24, ate mu myaka giri egijja bagiteebereza okuba nga ejja kukula wakati w'ebitundu 5 n'obutundutundu 5 buli 100 paka ku bitundu 6 n'obutundutundu 5 buli 100. Ayongedde n'akkaatiriza nti singa enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu enaayongera okutambula, singa enaaba tekkakkanyiziddwa, kiyinza okuvaako okukosa ssente amaka ze gakozesa nga zongera okuzinafuya n'ebintu ebisobolebwa okugulibwa. N'ayongerayo nti ekyo nakyo kiyinza okukosaamu engeri abantu gye beewola mu mabanka ne kyongeramu okukosa enkyukakyuka eyo. N'alambula nti ezo ensonga ze zifiiriddeko akakiiko okwongeza akabonero kali ke twakazaako central bank rate okutuuka ku bitundu 10 n'obutundutundu 25 buli 100 okuva wekaali. N'ayongera n'agumya bannayuganda nti kino kikoleddwa okwongera okukkakkanya enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu naye era kisigale nga kikyawaniridde ebyenfuna by'eggwanga kubanga ekyo kyankizo nnyo eri enkulaakulana y'abantu okutwaliza awamu. Era n'ayongera n'agumya bannayuganda nti akakiiko kano ke twakazaako era monetary policy committee keeteefuteefu okweŋŋanga obukonge bwonna obunaaba buzzeewo okukosa enkyukakyuka y'emiwendo gy'ebintu basobole okuttaanya ebyenfuna by'eggwanga. Mu bufunze byebyo omumyuka wa gavana byayogeddeko ku ripoota eno.
Mbadde nsaba okutangazaamu katono nnyo. Amanya nze Julius Kafuluma, nkola ku Bukedde TV. Tukaluubirizibwa okubuuza ebibuuzo naddala Deputy Governor buli ekiwandiiko kino kisomebwa nga tetwafunyeko kopi prayer. Kyobalaba nti tutuuse okubuuza ebibuuzo nga tetulina n'ebibuuzo bye tugenda kumubuuza kuba tetusobola kumuinterruptinga nga ali mu kukisoma already. However, bwe tuba nga tuzze ne tuweebwa ekiwandiiko mu budde ne tusooka ne tukiyitamu, tuba tusobola okufuna ebibuuzo bye tusobola okumubuuza nga amaze okukola ki okuwa statement ye. Naye ku ssaawa zino tuba tetusobola kumubuuza mukama wange nga tetulina kwe tusinziira kumubuuza. So tuba tusaba going forward nti bw'aba nga agenda kusoma ekiwandiiko ekyo, ffe abali munda wano batuweeko kopi tubeere nga tuyisaayisamuko ffe ffennyini tunootinga wa tugenda okumbuuza audiensi zaffe obaolyawo we ziba zirina interest ey'amaanyi mu kiwandiiko ekiba kigenda okusomebwa neyanzanyo.
ensonga eyo tugikutte tujja kulaba engeri tukitereezaamu.